name's Justin Weber. I'm the founder of a company called Ampsandsound, a full-time psychiatric social worker and part-time business owner who develops tube amps with a group of friends and people who care about sound a great deal. So CanJam Socal 2021 was exhausting and absolutely cathartic. I think we've all wanted to hang out and be part of the community. I miss the sense of community. So seeing everybody was super important. What we actually had a surprise. So we brought the Agartha. So Agartha was a name that we used for our 300B amp many years ago that was not probably as well executed as I would have liked. But the new Agartha, having done so well with the Rockwell, we were able to bring the Agartha back. And so the big surprise was to bring a 300B. And it was really, really well received and I think quite successful. And I think people got to see the Nautilus for the first time in person, which was bigger than expected, I think. I don't think people expected it to be so physically large, which is kind of fun. The Nautilus is, I think, like a final destination, final decision for people. It is, it's a statement piece. And so some people can own a statement piece, some people can't. It's a conscious decision. The Nautilus is not meant to just sit on the desk. It defines a space. It defines our hobby for the people who own it. And so it's not a high volume product. We build 2 a month. So at this point there are 30 out in the wild. And they don't come up very often. I think everybody wanted to hear the Nautilus. Everybody wanted to take the best headphones that they could get and put them against the best amplifier that they could get. And I think that was the pairing with the Nautilus. On day 2, though, I brought a Kenzie because on Saturday I brought only our reference line. So there was an Ovation, there was a Rockwell, there was an Agartha, there was a Nautilus. And that was meant to show you our best examples, different topologies, different signatures, but it was meant to show the best. But by bringing the Kenzie, I showed you what the value of our entry point is, and just how engaging and inviting our entry point is, how both physically unassuming it is, and everybody had a really good time listening, like going from the very pinnacle amp then going to the most accessible one and not feeling like they really were lost. There were things that are different and there's things that are worthwhile between the two, but not feeling that they were disappointed was really important. In the seminar, I tried to highlight, choose your product like you want to own it for a long time. Choose things about the product that convey your own interpersonal values and preferences. And so helping people when they came to the table, even though that they're maybe headphone users, what is it that you like to listen to? How do you like to listen to? What do you look for when you listen? And then guiding them through that path and helping them understand why one would choose a headphone amp that is tube-based. And, why you choose this topology versus that topology to match your own preferences. Tube amps are a throwback to a time past, and choosing to use it is sort of perpetuating the idea of what we call slow technology. So my dad uses a typewriter again. Don't quite understand that. People seal some letters that they wish to send people in wax. People collect fountain pens. People use mechanical watches. It is an idea to go back to, I value things that I can concretely understand, and I perpetuate that value in what I live and choose to express myself with. And so I think tube amps were built by hand. Even in mass production, they were a handmade product. And to use a tube amp is to say that you might use something that existed 70 years ago. Like the Kenzie or the Ovation uses a tube that was used in World War II. And so to understand that it has survived all the generations of our society and now is repurposed for your enjoyment, rather than an assembly line that was computerized So you can populate a PCB with spools of resistors that are surface mounted, and they just literally go and they'll lay them out. And it's, humans may set up that process, but it almost feels like robots are manufacturing it. And I think that divorcing ourselves of our humanity in what we consume sometimes feels that way. And tube amps are an embracement of the romantic nature of our humanity and the imperfections of our humanity. There was a mother-son combo that came to the show, and it was an old, slightly older woman who came down and sat down and started listening to headphones for the first time. I walked her over after a little bit. I made sure she was comfortable. I made sure she understood what she wanted to know, my thoughts on what might sound really good. But then I walked her over to Meredith Cardis, and Meredith walked her around and showed her the show. And I thought that was really special. I don't think we, as a greater community, as audiophiles, we're not as embracing of female patrons as we should be. And so seeing that there were a few spouses or significant others that were here and no one drew issue, I heard no complaints or perceived issues that these ladies felt uncomfortable, was super, super, super important. And that we went out of our way to make them feel comfortable was super, super, super important. So I was proud of us as an industry, as a group, for collectively doing that. And I was most pleased to see that. I mean, technology aside, I think that that's an important shift.
I wanted to ask, is there anything on the horizon for you?
Grover did it. Grover broke it. This is all Grover's fault. Grover has cost me $15,000 this month.
Right, out of pocket.
No,
what happens?
I'm being serious.
We don't have to put this in.
You can be my guest. Should put the whole thing in. You can blame the next amp on Grover.
Oh.
So Grover got to hear the Rockwell 2 weeks ago, and Grover then said, this is wonderful. This is what it should sound like as a DHT amp, but I really love 300Bs. And I went home and ruminated on that fact. We did some retooling, and a few $1,000s later, we had an Agartha for the show here today, and the Agartha now will exist. But because of that, we went and did the prototyping of the necessary transformers to do a Nautilus as a 300B. So in under 6 months, there's going to be a Nautilus that's a 300B Nautilus. And that also means that there could be a 2A3 Nautilus if we wanted it to be.
The Grover's over there.
Right, so...
Just like head over.
Yeah.
So in probably 2 weeks, there'll be a version of the Agartha now that's a 2A3. And in 6 months, there's going to be a Nautilus that's a 300B, and likely a Nautilus that'll be a 2A3, and no, they cannot do all three at the same time. I'm sorry. The transformers are a 60-day lead time. So they're wound for us, specific to us. They're not an off-the-shelf part, and that's a big deal. It's a source of a great deal of pride. It's actually probably the reason why our company exists in the way it does. Because instead of doing voltage divider networks to give you variable impedances, we actually wind transformers with appropriate secondary impedances that match the voice coils for which we're intending them to be. Metal work takes about 60 days, providing that there's no issues. There are rarely that there's no issues. Then it goes to finishing and powder coat with silk screen. That's 3 weeks typically. And then depending on where they enter the production queue, could be a 6-week lead ahead. And so when you combine all of that, new idea past pre-production, or new idea past prototyping into pre-production is a 5-month process.
Cool.
And Grover did it. Grover done screwed the hooch. Agartha comes from my ex-business partner, who's a really good friend, Jeremiah Griffith. His company is named Agartha, so we named one of our products after Agartha. And if you are a believer in either Taoist or Buddhist philosophies, I believe it can mean the center of the earth or the source of the earth's wellspring. So Rockwell is a family name to me. Kenzie is my daughter's name. When I did the Kenzie, and Grover's been around long enough to know this, there was a lot of consternation as to why I didn't do certain things. Like why are the jacks in the back and not in the front? Things like that. And they've remained that way. The rhyme and reason of it was because I used to build amps for high efficiency horns. And if you are a 2-channel person, inputs and outputs are in the back.
Right.
Always. But the design works the way it is, and it hadn't been changed. And so I took everybody's thoughtful suggestions, and it became, or badgering, and it became the Encore. And so the Encore was like wider, had layout, and things worked better. And then the Encore, Kenzie Encore, when I was like, the final iteration of this idea and circuit became the Ovation. So if you think like of a performance.
Right.
The Mogwai was to say that the Mogwai, for its relatively small form factor, which is sort of what eventually grew up to become the Forge. So a Mogwai is super cute, lovable. You just want to squeeze them and don't expose them to moonlight or water. So they're super powerful afterwards, right? And mean, much like a tube amp. It's super, super powerful. Rip your ears apart if you're not careful, and don't get it wet.
Okay.
So that was my own.
Don't touch the tubes when they're on.
Right. And before the pendant, there was the Lilu. Super, super powerful, right? Super beautiful. Fifth Element, Lilu.
Yeah.
So that's where that one came from.
Yeah. And
Let's see this. Jules Verne, the vessel for the voyage.
Yeah.
So that's where that idea came from.
Cool. Yeah.
Not as creative as they could be, but I don't have an ad department. Well, and I mean, not that I want people like looking at my daughter, but she's super cute, except for she has so she has my wife's good looks and my disposition, which is like a terrible combination. Absolutely terrible combination. So she's a pistol, and so the Kenzie's super, super cute, but punches so far above its weight.
Right.
Same idea.
Gotcha. One desert island combination, headphone and amplifier. What would it be?
A Kenzie 2, because I can roll the input tube at least. A Kenzie 2 and either an LCD 2, because I love the LCD 2s. A rosin, because they're absolutely gorgeous. An HD 800 or an Atticus.
So that was like 4 headphones.
But one amp.
Okay.
But one amp.